And welcome to Soulful Sunday here at Ariel's Corner. This is Ariel Gatoga, and we are streaming live on YouTube and on Twitch. Moderating today on YouTube are the lovely Shirley and the lovely Honeypaw, and moderating on Twitch is the lovely Deline. Thank you so much, moderators, and thank you so much to everybody for joining us today for this Soulful Sunday. Just as a reminder, we do take Mondays and Tuesdays off from streaming, so we won't have anything again until Wednesday. So I hope that you join us then. We do have stuff on our... Oh, this is an annoying... I'm going to switch this video. It's just going back and forth. I can't stand it. Driving me crazy. Hold on just a moment. Let's do something else. Let's do maybe this. This one will work. Okay, it won't bother me as much. Take that one out of my life. Anyway, we do have some cool stuff going on. You can find on our website, arielscorner.com. arielscorner.com. I do have a couple new booklets. I have the Book of Q, and I have a book on Kameas that you might enjoy. I'm working on some new courses. We'll get those out as soon as I have the time. I do have a few new t-shirts available as well. You can find them on my YouTube channel for sure. And I put a link on my Facebook page to where those t-shirts are. They're not in our shop yet, just because our shop is kind of getting an overhaul. We're not quite doing that yet, but we will. The shop will be ready eventually. Oh, let's see, what else do we have going on? We have, I've been so busy working that I've been not able to get as much done as I normally do, but I do have those final 2 lessons for the Kabbalah course that are still going to get uploaded, and I just have to get some videos done, and then I have to do some editing. So please be patient with me. I will get those up, but you've got plenty to work with on the path working until then. So there's plenty for you to do, but I will get those as soon as I possibly can. Let's see, what else? Oh, and the same goes with the prosperity. I've got new prosperity and money magic. I've got the new lessons still to be edited, and those will be up probably within the next 4 weeks or so. Just knowing my schedule right now is just kind of off the charts. So thank you for being so patient. All right, let's see, we have a chat thread open on each of these streams, so please chat amongst yourselves. If you have any questions for me, you can put them right into the chat thread, and let's get going. If you are in a place where it is safe and appropriate, please close your eyes and begin to take some nice, long, slow, deep, relaxing breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. With every inhale, feel more light and peace entering your body and mind. With every exhale, feel like you're able to let go of all tension in your body, along with anything in your mind that you do not want. Inhaling peace and exhaling as you let go. We picture ourselves on top of a beautiful mountain, in the center of a circular grove of trees. In the center of our circle, a bonfire blazes forth, lighting us in the grove with a sacred golden light. We recognize that this is the light of perfect love and perfect trust, and it easily and gently burns away everything unlike itself, leaving us safe and serene. Into this space, we invoke the presence of our Creator. To many of us, our Creator reveals themselves to be a mother and father, a goddess and God. Into this space, we invite the presence of our angels, our guides, our teachers. We ask that we be guided as we walk upon the way, becoming happier, more peaceful, more wise, and more loving people. Blessed be. In Psalm magic, sometimes we come across the phrase, the fear of God. And it's such an important phrase to understand because it's so easily misunderstood. Fear is the suppression of love. Fear is a belief that we're separate. And why in the world would we want to fear God? Because that means that we don't have love for God and that we feel like we're separate from God, because that's where all fear arises. So we have to understand what is meant by the fear of God. It really should be the awe of God. It's a misunderstanding of the word fear. It's a misdefinition of the word fear when people think that they're supposed to be afraid of God. God has no desire for us to be afraid of them. The God and Goddess, they're not happy if we're afraid of them. They want us to love them. They want us to connect with them. And to be afraid of them is reinforcing an idea that we're separate from them, which is the birth of all fear. But if we understand that it means the awe of God, and that awe, when applied to anything but God, does produce fear. So the fear of God, the way that it was taught to me by my own internal guide was, if you are afraid of God, if you have the fear of God, you won't be afraid of anything in the world. In other words, if you reserve awe for the Creator, then anything that was created by the Creator can't harm you, because you're not having awe for that. If you have awe about anything that's going on in the world, that's a fear-producing experience. But if you reserve that awe for the creative principle, then you have your power in alignment. And fear is something that we really need to address in our lives, because it's what brings about all of our discontentment. It's what brings about all of our problems and our diseases and everything, is this idea of fear. This idea of fear comes from the experience that we're separate from our good. We're separate from our source, that we're all alone. And the ego in and of itself is a fearful experience. So it's your whole worldview, when you're coming from the perspective of the ego, is based on fear. Whereas when you're coming from the perspective of your soul, your whole worldview is based on love, because your soul knows that it's connected to the infinite, knows that it's that there's no other source but the infinite, and that anything that we look upon in the world, it doesn't have creative power. It's a manifestation. Any manifestation in the world has no creative power. Therefore, there's nothing to fear. But the ego doesn't perceive things that way. The ego perceives things as very powerful outside of ourselves. That we, in fact, are powerless in the presence of everything in the world, and that we either need to learn how to conquer those people or situations or whatever it's being, what all the perceptions of the world. We have to conquer the perceptions of the world, or we are going to be conquered by the perceptions of the world. And that's why this world is such a fearful place. And that's why it's so very challenging to ever have a moment of peace here, because that's the dominant thought form in this world, is that of fear. Whereas from the soul's perspective, that doesn't exist. That's not even a concept. The soul doesn't perceive fear. The soul only has love. And that's why the soul lives in what the Psalms call heaven. And heaven simply it's not a place, it's a perspective. It's a way of looking at the world. It's a view, it's a worldview. It's an overarching thought form or thought system. And the two can never reconcile. You can't have love and fear in the same space. That can't happen. You can't have east and west at the same time. You can't go east and west at the same time. You can't move up and down at the same time. I guess you could if you're thinking in terms of stretching something, but I'm talking about if you're traveling somewhere. You can't travel up and down at the same time, east and west at the same time. You can't have total darkness and total light at the same time. There are quite literally two different worlds you can exist in. The world that is being projected onto the screen of space by the ego, or the world that is created for you in the moment by your creator. And the soul lives in one world and the ego lives in the other. And what our consciousness chooses to involve itself in is where we exist. Fear usually feels uncontrollable, and it usually feels like that it's something that's happening to us. But that's just not the case. You can take control of your fear, and you must take control of your fear, because fear is something that happens because of your misperceptions, because of how you're choosing to look at the world. And if you're choosing to look at the world from a fearful point of view, that must be changed. The thoughts of it must be changed. You can't ask for the effects of your thoughts to be changed. Because what you're doing is you're saying, I want to jump off a building, but I don't want to fall. There's no way in the universe that you're going to get the infinite to go against its own laws just for you. That's arrogant thinking. I want to think whatever I want to think, but I don't want the effects of it. It's not possible. So you don't want to ask the infinite, please take away my fear, because it can't any more than it can say, well, I'm going to make sure you don't fall when you jump off of a building. It's not going to do that. It's not going to go against the law of cause and effect. Fear is the effect of a way of thinking, a way of perceiving. And the way of thinking and the way of perceiving are your choice. But those are the things that you can ask for help with. Ask for help in regards to the realm of cause, not the realm of effect. It's just like if you're working magic to take care of a bill, you want to work on the realm of cause, not on the realm of effect. You don't want to say, please take this bill from me so much as please take the thought form of this bill and change it so that it turns into something better. Do you see that when we ask for the effects of something to be taken from us or to be changed for us, but we aren't willing to change the thoughts, then we're asking for the impossible. And the same goes with fear. If you're afraid of something, that's an effect. It's not a cause. It's an effect of viewing the world through the eyes of the ego rather than through the eyes of the soul. And that's a decision that we do make. Because, anytime you decide to just go along with the thought, that's still a decision. When your mind just starts to wander down pathways and you don't take charge of it, that's still a choice you're making. And the reason why we're so afraid is because we don't discipline our minds. We don't choose to allow our inner guide to help us think properly. And it's always there ready for us to get the help that we need. It's never gone anywhere. We've never been left unattended here. But we usually don't think to turn and ask that inner guide, what should I think? Guide my thoughts, guide my decisions, guide my perceptions. We usually just ask for it to help us fix something that's already manifest. And what that shows is that we're very confused. about how things work, because we don't want to believe our minds are that powerful. We don't want to believe that we have that much power, because if we knew how powerful our minds were, we wouldn't allow our minds to be so lazy. We wouldn't allow ourselves to have such great amounts of time where we just let our minds run amok. We would constantly be asking for help, constantly be asking for guidance at every turn. If you knew that you were carrying around, a nuclear weapon, and you knew that it was going to be, very problematic for the entire world if you accidentally did something wrong, but there was a guide there telling you what to do, I bet you'd say, now what? Now what? Now what do I do? Now how do I do it? Right? If you've never flown a plane, but for whatever reason, the pilot couldn't fly it and you had to get behind the controls, but it was there showing you how to do it, I would bet you would ask, now what? Now what do I do? Now what do I do? You'd be very hyper aware that you had a guide there and that you didn't know what you were doing. You'd be very willing to be guided and shown. But those things are nothing compared to the power of our minds and the power of our thinking to create our world for us, because all thought produces a result on some level or another. And so when we allow ourselves to indulge in thoughts that create fear, we are proving to ourselves and to the world that we don't understand how powerful we are, and that we don't understand that we have assistance available to us at all times. Now, some of us have never spent much time with our inner guide. Some of us don't even know that guide exists. Even though if we look back honestly, we can say, oh yeah, there's been times I've definitely felt like I've been guided. I've felt like I've made a better choice by listening to an inner voice. There are times when it's happened spontaneously. But what we want to do is we want to allow ourselves to purposefully spend time in silence with this guide so that it's available and accessible to us easily, because we've conditioned our minds to allow ourselves to listen. And that way, when we're in situations and we don't know how to think, when we're in situations and it's obvious to us that we are in a state of fear, that we can ask for a new way of seeing things. We can ask for a new way of thinking about things so that we can use the power of our minds in such a way as to create things and experiences in the world that most people would call miraculous. Most people would call them miraculous, but once we recognize what we're doing by listening to our inner guide and using our minds properly, it's not really so miraculous. It's actually pretty easy. It's actually pretty normal. Just like if a person from the 12th century came in and somehow saw you turning on a light and cooking food on a stove and putting dishes in a dishwasher, would say, oh, you're a magician, you're a sorcerer. Get thee behind me, Satan. It would be so scary for them to see how powerful you are. But it's nothing that is that powerful as far as you're concerned. It's just normal, because you're living in a time where we've evolved in such a way that those things are just normal. And the same goes with magic and with the workings of our mind. When we learn the power of our mind and we learn that we can listen to guidance so that we can take charge at the realm of cause, and not only help bail me out from effects of my thinking that I wasn't help bail me out from the effects of my thinking that I was unconscious in my choices of thought. I allowed my mind to run amok. I allowed my mind to wander. I allowed myself to conjure all kinds of experiences for myself without any wisdom. Right? So instead of asking for help bailing me out of those circumstances, I'm going to ask for help in using my mind in such a way that I have an experience of the world that is an experience of love rather than fear. And that takes care of a plethora of situations. Rather than going through and trying to like fix this and fix that and fix this and fix that and fix all of these problems that have arisen because of our need to view the world through the eyes of fear, instead of that, which is like needle in a haystack, what we're doing is we're asking our inner guide to help us to use our mind in a powerful way so that we only create things through the eyes of our soul. And when we do that, we start experiencing a life of our soul, a life of love, and a life free from fear. A life free from fear. And that's what it meant when my guide told me the fear of God, or if you're afraid of God, if you have the fear of God, nothing in the world can make you afraid. You'll never be afraid of anything in this world again if you have but the fear of God. And the fear of God is not being afraid of God. The fear of God is awe, the sense of awe at the power, at that immense power that we are created from, out of which we are created, and are an extension of. So the power of God is our power, and we don't want to see it. We don't want to see it. We just don't want to know how powerful we are. So it's so much easier to just kind of fall into the ego concepts of I'm nothing, I'm a little cog, I'm so easily victimized by the world, I'm so afraid of everything, I'm so afraid of everybody. That is so much easier for us to wrap our heads around than this idea that we are more powerful than a nuclear plant in our minds. We are so immensely powerful. And if we but allow ourselves to be guided in our thinking by that inner guide, we can create things and experiences and lives for ourselves that are so beyond our current recognition of what things look like, that it's as if we were born as a new person. People might come back to us in a couple of years after learning this and say, I don't even recognize you anymore. You're not even the same person anymore. And that's going to look so different for everybody because a lot of times people, this is the ego. Well, that means that I'm going to be a billionaire. Well, not necessarily, because that's not necessarily what you're after. That's not necessarily what your soul wants, is to be a billionaire. But you will be happy. You will have your needs met. You will have a life that is very well lived because you're no longer afraid of things in the world because you have the fear of God. You have the fear of God, that awe of your Creator. And recognizing what that really means, that not only is your Creator awesomely powerful, but so are you. Because you're an extension of that. Just because there's a big fire in the fire pit and a spark shoots out of that doesn't mean that spark isn't hot. Oh, it's only a spark. Well, it's just as hot as that fire. There may be many different fingers of flame shooting out of that fire, and they're all hot. They will all burn in the same way. And that's you. You're an extension of that, just like a beam of light from the star. You have that power. You have that power. And the idea of being afraid in this world is the way the ego wants to keep us down, because the ego was created out of a habit of thinking that we are separate and insignificant. And it's a type of self-destruction, and it's a type of arrogance. And we're just all in the habit of it. And we need to break that habit. And the only way to break that habit is to utilize that inner guide that each and every one of us has been given. And that guide will show up in all kinds of different ways for everybody. Sometimes it will be a plethora of guides. Sometimes it will be just that little voice that guides you. Sometimes it will be a whole totem animal experience. It doesn't matter. Whatever is most appropriate for you is how it's going to show up for you. There's not a right way and a wrong way. The only thing that it does do, though, that lets you know that you are on the right track is that it brings you a sense of peace. And it brings you a sense of understanding of your own power. It's never going to try to keep you down. It's never going to try to say, oh, you're only a this or only a that. It's always going to bring you back into understanding how powerful your mind is. And it's very challenging. Actually, let's say it this way. It's impossible to own your power if you're afraid of things in the world. Now, everybody has fear from time to time. That doesn't make you bad. It doesn't make you anything other than a human being. But understanding why it happens is what's important. And it's not hard to see. It's just that most people don't fully understand the power of their mind. The mind is so powerful, so mighty, and always active, always creating. And your thoughts and your beliefs together, they have a strength to create real change. But this power, when you understand it for what it is, can be very intimidating, very intimidating. And many people are afraid of their own thoughts, and they would rather believe that their minds don't have any influence. And so believing that you're not that important, believing that you're not that powerful, might reduce your sense of anxiety at times, but it weakens the respect that you need to have for your mind. Every thought matters. There are no meaningless thoughts. Every single thought we have does create something on some level. It may not create form in the physical world, but it does contribute to some sort of effect, because that's how things work, cause and effect. So understanding this, understanding the power of your mind, is how you overcome fear. That's how you free yourself from fear, is to understand the power of your own mind. So rather than when you get into a prayerful experience or an invocation, or you're working with your inner guide, instead of saying, please free me from fear, that's not a smart thing to ask for. It's like, I'm going to jump off the building. Please free me from falling. It's not going to happen. Instead, please help me use my mind. Please help me choose the thoughts that I should think so that I can access my power, so that I can experience the true power of my soul here, rather than seeing through the eyes of my ego, which is a machine of fear. So if you're experiencing fear, you're looking through the eyes of the ego. When you're looking through the eyes of the ego, you're going to see a fearful world. That's nothing to feel guilty about. You're just being a human being. But when you notice that, you can say, please help me to see things differently. Please help me see through the eyes of my soul, not the eyes of my ego. And then acknowledging that you're experiencing fear then is a positive, because then it gives you a reminder that it's time to ask for help to see things in a different way and to use your mind more powerfully, rather than going to sleep and starting to create by rote like the majority of us do. The majority of us just create by rote and then say, oh, I don't know why all this is happening to me. So we're asking not so much to have all of the issues and all the problems and all of our fears to be fixed by this power. We're asking instead to be taught how to use our minds powerfully, how to become the powerful sorcerer, how to become the powerful magician, or whatever you want to call yourself. It doesn't matter. That I want to become the powerful witch that knows the power of my mind. But then you're going to have to give up all of the laziness in the mind that produces fear. So we have to take responsibility for our fearful thoughts and recognize, if I have the fear of God, I have nothing to be afraid of. And the fear of God means what? Awe. Awe. And one other thing before we end, the way that I've always looked at the fear of God is that fear in this world, when we experience fear, there's always pain. It's a painful experience. The fear of God is the only type of fear that you can experience that doesn't have pain. And that's why I call it ecstasy. Ecstasy. When you have that ecstatic feeling of oneness, that you feel the presence of your Creator, and you recognize that you are so close to that Creator that there's nothing that you can be closer to, that's the fear of God. And it's a wonderful feeling. And that's why if you have that, you have nothing to fear in the world. So if you're fearing something in the world, get back to the fear of God instead, and you will get through it. You will rise above it, and you will have access to that inner guidance that can always show you how to use your mind in a better way, so that you can become the most powerful witch you can be, or the most powerful sorcerer, or the most powerful human being that you can be. And you can transform your life, and you can be free from fear. And you're no longer subject to the whims of your ego, because you've disciplined yourself. You've become an adept. And that's all an adept is someone who has trained their mind and is no longer under the influence of their ego mind. And that ego mind constantly is asking us to fall asleep and do things by rote rather than consciously. So the fear of God simply means the awe of that which is the creative force of the universe. And if you have the fear of God, you have nothing to fear. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I so appreciate you. Until next time, blessed be. Okay, let me see if we have any questions. Oh, we do. Okay. I still don't know how we came into physical form. I wonder if reincarnation is true. Yeah, probably. Yeah, I believe that reincarnation is true, in that everything is cyclical. So if you think about reincarnation as being the way of evolution, we evolve, from the soul evolves. And how do you evolve? Well, for one thing, you were created perfect, so you don't need to evolve. Your soul ultimately doesn't need to evolve. But we do need to forget. We do need to evolve in that we need to forget the errors of our own egoic way of thinking. So at each time the way I look at it is, each time we incarnate, we are growing, and we're growing, and we're growing, and we're getting stronger, and we're evolving. And that really ultimately means that we're doing less, that we're having less. Think about Michelangelo, when they said, how do you sculpt such a beautiful statue? And he said, I take that marble and I just chip away at it for everything that's not the statue. And that's what our reincarnations are, is they're getting rid of everything that's not us. Pretty soon we don't need to do that anymore. And we can take charge of our minds in this life so that we don't need to keep reincarnating. That's the whole idea of it, is that we can be freed from the wheel of birth and rebirth. Here's one. I believe some of us are overwhelmed by decisions or indecisive tendencies. I like to have a selection of experiences. I wonder if that could be confusing to my guides. Your guides aren't confused. Your guide is never confused. Your guide is pure wisdom. So when you're saying you have overwhelmed by decisions and indecisive tendencies, and you like to have a selection of experiences. If you're overwhelmed, then I don't quite understand. To me, those two don't go together. If you like to have a selection of experiences and that's your preference, and at the same time you're overwhelmed by decisions, I don't understand. So that's why when you talk to your guide, if you're being overwhelmed by a decision, you can say, help me decide, rather than deciding all by yourself. You can say, help me decide on this, because your guide is nothing more than your own higher wisdom. So I think that helps. I hope I understood your question. I wonder if having many selected experiences could seem like inner conflict or indecisiveness when I just want to embrace many outcomes. Now I realize that fear I'm asking for too much. Okay. You're not asking for too much, probably. You're probably asking for too little. The infinite wants you to be happy. And for you to say, I want this experience, I want that experience, I want this experience, I want that experience, might be the problem, because maybe instead the better way to look at that is just say, I think these are the things that I want. Help me decide for the best. Help me decide to see things differently. Help me decide for thoughts that are going to contribute to my happiness. Your soul already knows what it wants. Your soul already knows what it wants. It means that it knows what you're good at, because it is good at it. So if you're a talented singer, if you're a talented chef, if you like numbers, if you love recycling, I mean, there's all kinds of things that people love. And your soul wants you to be involved in the things that you love. And if there's a plethora of them, so that's wonderful. But it's never confused. It's never confused. The only thing that causes confusion is our need to think in alignment with that ego mind, which is simply the idea of separation, of fragmentation. And that's why things are so scary for us here, is because we think that we're all alone. We think that there's strong things and weak things, and, dog eat dog, and that's the kind of world we live in. And so you're either having to fight against something, protect yourself against something, overcome something, or being annihilated by something here. And so when you're saying, if I have many selected experiences could seem like inner conflict, no, inner conflict is inner conflict. You having all of the wonderful things that your soul wants you to have is not going to cause you conflict, because everything is in its right place. You doing your true will doesn't cause conflict, even if there are many facets in it, because everything is in its true place. What causes inner conflict is conflicted thinking. And if you're having conflicted thinking, you can ask for help so that you have a better way of thinking of things, and it's not conflicted. But you have to give up your own ego in regards to that. You can't say, well, I want it my way, and, again, I want to jump off the building and I don't want to fall. You have to recognize that truth works in a specific way. And so that if you're listening to that inner guide and you're asking that you be guided into making decisions, you be guided into the way that you're using your mind, then that inner conflict has to disappear, because your guide is all wise. Your guide does not have confusion. Your guide doesn't have conflict. You do. We do. Not you personally, only you, but we all do. So if we're going through the conflict, if we're going through the confusion, that's not our guide, that's us. So hopefully that helps. All right. Thank you so very much for all of those fabulous questions. And thank you so very much to the amazing moderators, Shirley, Honeypot, and Deline. I hope you enjoyed our session today, everybody. And I sure enjoy being with you, and I appreciate you so very much. And we'll be back on Wednesday with some witchy woo. So until then, blessed be.